at virtual InkBooks. I'm just going to log out so you can see what the actual login screen looks like. We're logging in as an administrator, so we're going to be able to see everything that's going on in our dev environment here. Close that out. So our main screen here, all of our InkBooks that we have created so far. Virtual InkBooks is an online collaboration tool. So the idea here is a cloud-based, web-based interface that allows groups of people, whether it's in one location or multiple locations, to be able to collaborate with InkBooks. You know, whether that's large InkBooks like say a Pantone library, or smaller pared down books using custom inks. Imagine ink libraries from an ink manufacturer, or building out individual ink books for, say, a specific customer. Say I'm working with Procter & Gamble and I want to build out an ink set that's specific to, say, the Tide group of products. That would give a designer access to specifically those inks. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new ink book so you can see what that process looks like. And we're going to add our ink book. So now we have our nice empty ink book, and we can jump in there and we can start adding our own inks. So we'll give it a name called test 1. We can add inks based on RGB, CMYK, or lab values. So let's do a CMYK ink here. So we're going to say 100 and 50 magenta. We'll give it a little bit of yellow and a little bit of black. So we'll give ourselves a nice little blue. We also have the ability to tag and give descriptions to our individual inks. So maybe we're tagging this specific ink set to a specific output device, but you can see here we've got a bunch of just placeholder tags in here, but these are all completely customizable. You can add your own tags based on what your own internal needs might be. So they could be based on a specific customer. So we're going to put customer relations in here, and we're going to add our nice blue ink. If we hover over, we can start selecting inks. We can also see our tags when we go in and out. We can also add ink books based on a CXF file. So we can see our solid coded library that we have here. Let's just jump into that. You can see all of our solid coded ink book here. This was actually imported from a GMG rip. So we exported the ink as a CXF file and imported it into the ink libraries. So we can actually start selecting these. So we're in my Tide example. Imagine if I wanted to create a new ink book based on just this subset, I can start selecting inks and add those specific inks to another ink library. So we can actually see them, say, as the Procter & Gamble Tide ink book. As far as controlling how all of this is actually used, we have user control. So your login is individualized. And under that individualized user, say Mr. Drago here, we can see his ink books that he has access to. Currently doesn't have access to my James test, but maybe I want him to have access to it. So now he has James test, he has our solid coded and a few other ink libraries. So you can imagine if a designer was, say, assigned to actually design something for Tide, maybe the only ink book that I would actually give them access to is that specific ink book. The idea here is to kind of draw a box around what a designer can actually use for inks. So in the case of our solid coded library that came from our GMG rip, that's actually not a full solid coded library. It's just the inks that we have the gamut for on that specific output device. So you can imagine now when a user goes and designs something with one of those inks, we know that that output device can actually accommodate and hit that color repeatedly every single time. So that's the web interface, nice and simple. Let's jump over to Illustrator and have a look at what it actually looks like in the extension in Illustrator, because most of us work in Illustrator when we're designing. So in virtual InkBooks, again, now we can see over here that we've got exactly the same library that we were looking at on the other side. There's my test and the test ink. This is live, so it's constantly updating to stay live with the database that's on the website. So let's go ahead and let's add our test 1 to our swatches over here. So now we have our test 1 and we have our box, and we can go ahead and color it in. Now we know that CMYK value is going to follow all three through. Also, based on the naming convention, the RIP would then understand what it is that I'm trying to hit if I had exported this from my GMG RIP for the sake of argument. The other thing that we can do in here too is, you notice that I've got this blue block in here. This is just a CMYK block that was already in my artwork. So what we can actually do in virtual InkBooks, say somebody supplied you a piece of art and we have this CMYK value in here. Virtual InkBooks has a setting in it that allows you to decide what delta E you would like to vary from and search your InkBooks based on that delta E to find an ink that's actually close. So if we go to the search and we say filter by sample, because I've got this highlighted, what Virtual InkBooks is going to come back with is it's going to tell me what inks in all of my libraries are within, currently I have it set to 5 delta E. Obviously that's a very high number because I want to show a bunch of different things. But you can see here it comes back with a bunch of the solid coded library and then a bunch of random other colors that we've got in RGBs, LED values, CMYK values. So let's say we're going to say test spot 199 is actually what I want it to be this time. So rather than the CMYK color, now we can recolor it with something that we know is within our tolerance to actually print that color on our press. So that's Virtual InkBooks to a certain degree. The other thing we thought we'd give you a sneak peek of is in our development environment, we have what's called Virtual Artbooks. This is our asset management solution or small asset management solution. So let's pop this open. And you can see here we've got a bunch of PDFs. We can have TIFFs, we can have JPEGs. So you can imagine, again, if I was giving access to a designer that was going to say, design for, say, Tide, we could have logo assets in here as well as the ink assets. So let's just go ahead and we'll add our little sheep. And we double click him and now we have our sheep. You could also use this for, say, individualized mark sets or things like that that you use on a regular basis that you want to share out across multiple locations, platforms, between customers, design suppliers. They would actually have access to specific assets, and it's all controlled exactly the same way as the ink libraries are, in that I can give access to specific art books to specific users. So thanks for your time, everybody. That's Virtual InkBooks and Virtual Artbooks.